So I had a lot of fun playing with this patch, which I just played for you in the introduction, and I thought it might be a good idea to do a patch breakdown video. So sort of working backwards from what I had set up here using these Bastl modules to show you how I constructed all of these pieces into what you saw in the video. Today I'm using pretty much all Bastl modules, and some of these I bought myself and some of them were sent to me by Bastl, so thank you very much to the folks at Bastl for sending them to me. And the heart of today's patch are two modules: the Softpop 2, the new version of the Softpop, and the Basil, which is built on the same hardware as the Pizza oscillator. So if you have a Pizza, you can flash it with new firmware. I'm also bringing in a couple of old friends. We've got things like Aikido, which I've done videos on, to be a mixer and final output stage and sidechaining. Obviously Pizza and Ikarie are here, but today they're going to be doing something a little different. Dark Matter is like a feedback generation module, and typically you would use it to create crazy feedback tones, but here I have it set up to actually generate a kick drum. I'm going to show you how to do that. And I'm using Waver here as just a very simple mixer for the three oscillator outputs from Pizza. Bastl have updated this in conjunction with Pete Edwards at Casper Electronics, so you know it's going to be good. Like, it's got like a really good sound from it. This is a self-contained semi-modular synth. Now what I've done is I've taken it and mounted it in my Eurorack case. So let's unpatch all of this and start from a blank slate. I'm going to take you through how I built this all up, and we're going to explore some of the cool features on the Softpop and how you can use it with a few of these other Bastl modules. First of all, notice that I have it mounted here in my case, and the way you do this is by getting these little adapter plates, which you can buy them on Etsy, but I bought these off Bastl's website. So you remove the side plates and the back plate from the module itself, which I would keep because this has actually got the full signal flow printed on it. So this is really useful to have, and there's a lovely little message here. It's like, aha, you've opened it up. Welcome to a whole new world. The beautiful thing about Bastl modules is they're actually designed very much in mind of being hacked and modified. They've got all these various points around the back here on the circuit board you can solder stuff into if you have the skills and the experience. I'm using the digital VCO firmware here. So they have two firmware versions out. One, you have an analog VCO, so it's all analog. The other one is a digital VCO version. You have to switch the jumper here to say to the digital side, this little jumper there, and you just flash it with some new firmware by playing it into the reset input here. So I'm going to patch the output here, just the straight up output into, we'll go into this channel here on Aikido, and we'll then just take a mono feed here. Now we're not going to hear anything, so I'll just flick it into drone mode, and now we hear it droning away. This is a detuned super saw mode. I'm going to turn this down. And you can adjust the kind of the detuning from both oscillators, both sawtooths in tune on that side. And I just get it so it's right above the letter F. There. So to bring in a bit of low end, we want to take the triangle output here, which is the output of the digital oscillator, patch it into the filter input, so we're bypassing the pulse output, which is the default output here. And then we're going to take the pulse output, I'll use a shorter patch cable, and we're just going to patch the pulse output into the input in the mixer section here. So now when I bump this up to drone, there I can bring in that sub, a lot richer sound. Oh, I like it. Listen, lovely punch to that now. So with this, we now have a nice, deep, rich sound, lots of harmonics, which will respond well to the filter. Oh, you can just imagine a little bit of modulation going on there. You can send that to loop. Kind of hard to play by hand, but you can have a lot of fun that way. Alright, let's turn that off there. We got a filter built in, but I actually wanted to do a little bit more filtering in the patch that I had set up. So I wanted to use Ikarie because I wanted to add a bit of stereo spread to it and a little bit more bite on the resonance, and I really wanted Ikarie to do that for me. So what I did here was we just took the output of Softpop and we're going to patch it into the left in here on Ikarie, and then we can take a listen to the left and right outputs of Ikarie going in over here. And we're kind of obscuring ever so slightly the Softpop. This is the curse of patching these modular setups. So you see you can get some nice. And by modulating the mod parameter here on Ikarie, look at that movement we can get. So we have a couple of different modulation options. What I want to do is I want to use the sample and hold output here. What we're going to do is we can patch that into the mod input here, kick everything off. Now you hear that sample and hold. Now let's bring in the Bastl time manipulation delay module. So what we're going to do is we're going to just repatch here and take the output of the stereo output from Ikarie here into the left input and the left output, sorry, the right input obviously of Bastl. And to try and keep the cables neat and tidy, we're going to just take the left and right here, and we're just going to do it this way for now, straight into the output module, so we can actually hear a little bit of that ping pong delay when we get to play with that. Now by default it's unclocked, but we do have a clock output. So what I'm going to do is I will take the clock output here on Softpop, which you see there, I patched in, and I patch it into the sync input here on Bastl. We'll just turn that down to dry, turn off the feedback, leave the delay where it is. I'm just going to take this cable and replace it with this shorter one so it's less in the way. Now let's bring in the delay. Let's take a quick look at Bastl. Much like the interface on the pizza, you tap the buttons to choose different modes, and that changes the behavior of these knobs or sliders. So again, you're going here, blur, filter, or tap setting here for this slider. And here you're choosing between time and stereo spread. And then a long press will bring you over to the other control here, which is the fine-tuning control. So we'll just change to stereo spread. Let's look at the way we want to use the sequencer on the Softpop. Now, the sequencer is actually one of the kind of hidden and valuable features which you might discount at first, thinking, oh, you know, it's an 8-step sequencer, big deal, I'll sequence it from somewhere else. But it's actually got a lot of clever design features, as you would expect from Bastl, built into what seems like a very simple sequencer. So in its default mode here, you just turn on and off gates by pressing these buttons, and you have 8 different gates, and of course you can turn them on or off as you play, and that can straight away give you some interesting rhythmic variety. You also can change scales by pressing the scale knob, so you can jump between different scales as you're playing. Play there. So now you hear I've hit play and we've got some notes programmed in here. And straight away I've changed the melody. And by modulating my filter over here, we're having a bit of fun. Now we'll slow down the delay and just add a little bit of depth into the sound. Now I can adjust play modes here by hitting play. So if I press play and 3, I'm only playing the first 3 steps of the sequence. And now I'm playing the last 4 steps by pressing play and 4, play and 5. Jumps around randomly on the first 3 steps, which I kind of like the sound of. now how do I use scale? Well, I can jump to different scales by pressing scale on these different gates. Now, if I press these in sequence, we'll move between them because we're sequencing those scales. So now we're only playing 3 notes, but we're moving through different scale mappings and we're getting a completely different melody from it. And this shows you how to approach using the sequencer on the Softpop. Don't think of it as, oh, just a simple 8-step sequencer. Think of it as a way of kind of building creative, complex rhythm and melodies and then interleaving them against each other. But there's something else I want to show you, which is we can also use this sequencer to trigger other events in our patch. And for this, I want to bring in dark matter. And as I said at the start, I want to use dark matter as a kick drum. Now, let's just patch dark matter into our Aikido mixer. And we'll just swap things around now because we're going to do a little bit of mixing here in Aikido. So we're going to patch everything into it. And we're going to take just a simple mono output into our module here, our output module. Just turn off, I'll turn off the Softpop for now. And we are going to take the output here, which is the crossfader output, and we're going to pop it into the input here. By default, dark matter works on the principle of feedback loops. Now, normally you try and avoid feedback loops when you're building modular patches, but you know, if you're Pete Edwards, you like feedback loops, and you want to build them into modules and use them creatively. And you can already hear, you could make a little bit of music out of this if we hit this thing with envelopes. So, where can we get envelopes from? Well, the nice thing here is that the Softpop has a slide generator, and you can set slides per step. Now, typically a slide is used to slide from one note to another, so kind of whoop, kind of sound like that. But if you set the slide time to be 1, as slow as possible, the slide gate that's generated here is effectively another trigger. So you're getting a second sequencer's worth of triggers here. Now they're just trigger gates, which you can use in this case. So I've set them on steps 1, 2, 5, and 8. So now I can take the output of slide G, which is the slide gate here from Softpop, and we're not going to use it on the Softpop. We're not going to slide notes. We're going to patch it into the feedback CV here on the dark matter. We're going to turn up the feedback CV control, so it's going to basically open that up. And let's hit play. And we're going to use that into the channel A here on Aikido. And the reason channel A is special on Aikido, if you've watched my Aikido video, you'll know this, it's connected by default to the sidechain output, and that's going to give us a sidechain envelope, which we can use for some modulation elsewhere in the patch. So now when we hit play, we now have a nice kick drum behind our sound from the Softpop. We can sidechain the Softpop against that kick drum by just turning down these guys here. There's more we can set up in this patch, and what I want to do is add a sort of a hi-hat or high-frequency sound to complement the kick drum. So if we just listen, the kick drum is there. I'd like to kind of offset it with, say, a hi-hat sound or something like that. So we're going to use our friend here, the Pizza, for that. Now what I want to do is I'm going to take the 3 different oscillators from Pizza. You have a pulse oscillator, the main FM output oscillator, which goes into B here on waver, and I'm going to take the sub-octave oscillator here, which can also, you can adjust it up and down the octave using these switches on Pizza. DivKit has obviously a great video on Pizza, and there's Bastl also themselves have good videos. One of my favorite oscillators right now, though, the Softpop is close in the running because it's just got so much complexity, but they've dialed it in really well. So there's a lot of sweet spots in what would normally be a very kind of forbidding FM sounding harsh oscillator. That being said, we're going to just use this guy here as a VCA, and you'll see why in a second, because I'm going to modulate it using looped envelopes, LFOs here from Carve. And we're going to just take the output over here, where is it there, find my way around, into this middle channel to here. So now, basically, harsh, there's your sub-oscillator, basically a sine wave. So you're going to get very harsh FM metallic tones out of that middle output. There's your pulse output. Not much happens except when we modulate there. So obviously, if I want to use these as a rhythmic sound, I need to gate them. So I'm going to take the output here of my waver, and I'm going to patch it into the VCA input here on this first channel, or the fourth channel of Carve. So Carve is 4 channels of VCA and envelope generators. Really, really clever module. I actually have 2 of them because I like it so much. Now, I want to trigger this in a somewhat rhythmic fashion, but I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I want to trigger it off the clock output here of the Softpop. And the reason I want to do that is I'm going to play around with the rhythm of the kick drum, but I'll keep the main beat. I'll keep the kind of the floor on the floor rhythm, if you will, using the pizza oscillator, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it actually gives a very nice result. And we might also send it through a little bit of a delay in a second just to play around with it. So let's do some repatching. First of all, we're going to have to mult our clock. Now, I have a mult over here, but don't worry, Softpop has you covered. There's a buffered mult up here, these top 4 patch points, and that's really handy in a patch setup like this. So let's take our clock, we'll patch it into this one here on the mult. We're then going to take this end of the mult output back into, I'll use the same color as last time so we're consistent. This end into the sync inputs. Now we've patched our clock back into our delay. And we are going to patch the other output here into the trigger input. And now we can take a listen to pizza being used in conjunction with the kick drum. So we get a little bit of movement going on there using waver to slice and dice those waveforms up. And of course we can also patch that sidechain output, which is over here. Actually, use a bigger cable for that because it's very far away. Let's take the sidechain, which is over here, and we'll patch it into this FM index modulator. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're having some fun. And now I can adjust the envelope, obviously. I'm also able to do a little bit of cross modulation here. I've patched the output of a looping envelope from channel A on Carve into the release time over here. So we're going to get a bit of movement now on this sound. I'll just sidechain that to make sure our kick comes through nice and clearly. I hope you found today's video somewhat instructional. I had a lot of fun putting this together. I sat down a while ago to really kind of study Softpop, and then Basil arrived and I really wanted to study it too. And this kind of patch just kind of grew organically as I experimented and played and just patched things into each other and read the manual and tried a few other ideas, which really I think is in the spirit of, the best way to approach modular sometimes is just to start patching randomly and see what happens and then kind of tweak it from there. There's probably a lot of clever ways you could do this that use fewer patch cables or fewer modules, but the whole point of this was just to discover what's possible with a small setup, a few cables, and a couple of really cool modules from Bastl Instruments. I'm going to do deep dive videos a bit more on Basil in the future, so stay tuned for that because I really want to dig into this a bit deeper. But for now, let me know what you think in the comments down below. I really appreciate reading them and try to answer everybody's questions. And thanks very much for watching.